Hello and welcome everyone to my second ever video on YouTube. Today I'm going to tell you how you can become filthy rich in the Witcher tree, or at least make a lot of money so you can buy whatever you need. So again, like the first video, I'm going to explain to you everything and go through it step by step so you can become as rich as I am. Now, before the first thing you need to understand is the importance of exploration. So it might not come as a surprise to you, but in an open world game, especially this game, going off the beaten path, doing every side mission you find, exploring question marks, is really worth it, as it will lead you to tons and tons of treasures, from expensive weapons, to armor, to crafting components, to alchemy components and formulas, and all of these will make you richer, because firstly you don't have to buy all of these things as you already found them in the wild, and secondly you'll be able to sell those things for even more money. So that's really a very important thing. For example, I've been exploring quite a lot during my place and found all of these very expensive and valuable crafting components and alchemy components. And by having all of these, that means that I never ever have to buy things from a smith to craft equipment that I need, meaning that I can just save tons of money. You see, all of these very high prices, merchants mostly sell these for a multiple of those prices, so exploring this already puts you at a massive advantage to becoming rich. So go out, find all of these question marks in the wild, kill everything there is, and just leave their corpses for lots and lots of expensive items. And this is the basis and the very fundamentals of becoming rich in the Witcher tree. Is to know which things you need to spend your money on and which things you don't. You really need to be a bit economical with your money here, as there are a lot of things that you can spend your money on, but only a handful of things you should actually give your money to. For example, merchants are completely pointless to give money to for like 99% of the time. They are extremely expensive in prices for their weapons, their armor, but especially their crafting components, which again shows you the importance of exploration and finding those components by yourself. And also their weapons and armor just aren't that good, like practically useless, especially again when you compare them to Witcher gear. That is a lot better. So don't spend your money on buying weapons or armor, because they'll just be inferior to what you will eventually equip, or they will only be good for a couple of levels. Don't try to buy crafting components. Instead, go out there and try to find them yourself, as you can see how much money you can save by not doing anything of this. Also, don't do other dumb things like buy food or all of those things. Just don't do it.
Take care now.
Go, and in the world glory.
So what should you really spend your money on? Well, there are only just a couple of things. Let's start with the most important of all. Obviously, Gwent cards. You know, I don't play The Witcher for The Witcher, I play The Witcher for Gwent, obviously. And Gwent cards are just amazing. Always spend your money on Gwent cards, 100%. Even economically speaking, you're going to win a ton more money with a better deck, like when playing certain quests that can grant you thousands of gold upon completion. So buy those Gwent cards. The next thing you should spend your money on is crafting your Witcher gear, which I just can't stop talking about.
Witcher gear is the best there is, but it has to be crafted, and crafting weapons and armor not only costs money, well, if you want to buy the crafting components, but also you need to pay a certain sum to crafters to create your armor sets. And the higher level those armor sets are, the more expensive they become. Especially like the very late game. For example, my Grandmaster Urson gear. I don't remember it perfectly, but I think I even had to pay like 30 to 35,000 gold to create this armor, which is a whole lot of money. So really be economical and keep your money in your pockets till it really matters to spend it. Now, last thing that I always spend my money on, but which is a bit optional, is the rune rite. So some people call the rune rite a hack fraud, which he probably is. I mean, you need to pay him like 30,000 golds to be able to set up shop, and the only thing he then gives you for free is some enchantments. But the crafting components you need for enchantment he doesn't give for free. He doesn't give you any special sigils or something, no bonuses. No, so he's a really big fraud, but I personally find that some of his enchantments are very strong, and I also use them for my perfect Witcher builds. So I would suggest you to also spend your money on the hack fraud. Some smaller things to spend your money on as well are your home of Corvo Bianco in Blood and Wine. I think that's a good thing to spend your money on. The only crafting components I also spend money on are alchemy components, because I don't know, in this game I find finding the right alchemy components a bit difficult and a bit tedious, and honestly they don't cost that much, like 10 gold for a couple of petals. Instead of just having to run across the map to find it, just spend the money. But be a bit smart about it. Some alchemy components cost a lot more money, and yeah, then it's better to try and find those first. Otherwise, there's not that much. Maybe some small things here and there. Spending money on keeping your gear at 100% durability. I think that with 100 to 110,000 gold, you should be able to get more or less everything you need in the game. If you really want to have all the Witcher gears on their Grandmaster variant, which I don't even do, it's probably going to be more like 300 or 1,000 gold or something. But with 110, you should be able to get all the gear and all the weapons you need. Now on to tips, because the smart man around you might have already noticed that I've said a lot of things about what to buy and what not to buy, but not giving you tips on how to make money more effectively. So let's jump in that first. The first thing I want to give you as a tip is obviously to complete quests, main quests, side quests, treasure hunts, all of those. Many of these quests will give you a bit of money upon completion. Some of them will give you nice components or weapons or armor which you then can sell. So that already gives you a nice start. Just make a small calculation here. If you would get, say, 20 gold or 50 gold for every quest you have, well, there are a whole lot of quests for you to complete. So I think there are about 200 to 300. So yeah, 20 gold, 300 times. Alright, it's 6,000 gold. Might not be massive, but it is something. And that's not looking at many of the certain quests that give you a lot more money for completing them, or very nice gear. The most important ones for you to make money are the Witcher contracts. So where you go out witchering like Geralt's profession. You start by going to the quest giver. Always talk to the quest giver. This is actually something that many people don't know, but if you complete a Witcher contract without talking to the quest giver, you'll get less money than if you would. The reasoning I think is, and it's pretty interesting. You know, if there's a huge monster terrorizing your village, who you gonna call? A witcher. And then you want to pay him a lot of money, so he comes and he wants to help you. But imagine that there's like this dude who just came around and already fixed your problem. Then why would you give him a lot of money? He already fixed your issue, so you're going to pay him less. So always go to the quest giver first, then try to haggle. Maybe make a quick save, because if you haggle too poorly, he will break off communications. But haggling is a good thing to always get a couple of more money, like 40-50% extra, which is certainly not bad. And yeah, you can make a lot of gold from those quests. The second tip to make money is by competing in many of the competitions that offer monetary rewards in this game. Things like fist fights, horse races, and Gwent. These can really give you a very nice early boost in economic power. Many of them allow you to gamble. Always gamble the max amount of money onto yourself. If you win, you double the amount of money you bet on yourself. And if you lose, well, you can always look for a quick save or something. It's not cheating if it's well, you can choose if it's cheating. But that's also a big one that can easily net you a couple of thousand golds. Now, as you can see, I'm in Skellige right now, because this is for tip 3. If we look at the map, there are actually a whole bunch of icons in the waters. Now, these icons are almost unanimously smugglers' caches, and they are really boring things to go and collect. And there are so many of them that the first time I played around this game, I didn't even bother. But I have to admit, inside those smuggler caches are lots of money, lots of good weapons, armor, crafting components, which you then can again sell. And I'm pretty certain that if you were to do all of them, which is a slog, but it will net you 30,000 or more gold just by doing all of them. Takes a lot of time, can be pretty boring, but if you want to get the best weapons, if you want to get rich, you should definitely do it. Oh, and here's still a monster. You know what, I'm going to kill this one at the end of the video. I've been playing a lot of Warhammer 3, you know, Blood for the Blood God. So maybe Scarbrand and Khorne would be happy if I just slew this thing here. Kind of forgot about that. A next tip is to occasionally go to the Vivaldi Bank in Novigrad or the Bank of Toussaint and exchange coins.
I'd like to change some coins.
By all means.
As you can see, I now gotten by about 2,000 extra crowns. So what happened? During your quest, you'll find a lot of foreign money. Nilfgaardian florins and then orens as well, and you can exchange those for Novigrad crowns. I think 1 florin is equal to 3 crowns and 1 oren is equal to 1 crown or something. So if you occasionally go to these banks, you'll be surprised of how much of these coins you will have found, and they will give you a nice boost to your money. Then we come to another tip, and this is actually my pro tip for you, and it is dismantling. So with every smith in the game, you can go to one of the tabs called Dismantle, which allows you to break down items to their base components. Now, why is this so important? Well, you see all these nice things I have here. I actually didn't find all of these components just lying around. Some of them I actually got by dismantling items, and that way getting access to the more valuable components inside of them. Look at this gold diamond ring, for example. It's worth 320 gold, but it has a gold nugget and a diamond inside. If we look, this diamond here at itself is already worth 300 gold. Not comparing the silver inside, the gold nugget inside, excuse me. And this diamond is a lot more valuable than just this ring. It's a lot rarer. So it is very worth it to simply pay a price of 80 gold to dismantle this ring and then get the components inside, which you can then use later on for crafting. Here is the Magdera curse that we together found when I killed the monster in the beginning. And it has Curd Draconic Leather. And Curd Draconic Leather is a pretty valuable resource for you to have and is used in many Witcher gears. So you could sell the curse for 1000 gold, which is very nice, but if you feel like you really need some extra Draconic Leather, then you can break down the curse and get all the valuable things inside of it, which are much harder to get by. It is a bit of a push and pull and a bit of looking what you need. Do I have enough of Draconic Leather? No, maybe break down a couple of curses instead of selling them. Always look at your components or relic weapons or armor. What's inside of it? Is it worth it to break it down? No. Alright, then sell it. If it is, then break it down. Here, Copronicle Oil. Ore is a unique ore for Toussaint, which is a bit rare to find, but you can also find it in certain junk items. So break those down for a small fee, and now you've got access to those ores, which you can then use to create a lot more valuable components. This is a bit my pro tip to you. And is also how I got access to many very expensive and hard to find items. Now, I've already shown you a couple of tips to make some nice money on the side. And if you do all of these tips and you follow them, you complete quests, you go into competitions, you'll easily get a decent amount of gold, like 40-50k maybe at the end of the game, but it's still far not enough to finally get to the money you actually need to get everything, or to get at the amount of money that I have after buying all of those things. So here is the most important and the biggest way to become rich in the Witcher tree, and that is nothing else than being an amazing merchant and stealing everyone else's money with your shrewd business techniques. To become a filthy rich merchant, you will first need to understand a bit how the economy in the Witcher tree works, because this is really the big thing. Firstly, you need to understand that there are different types of merchants who prefer different types of items. In this picture here we have an innkeep, an armorer, a blacksmith, a general merchant, a herbalist, and an alchemist. And each of these guys has their own profession and is specialized in their own thing. And if you sell items to them that are correspondent with their profession, then they will pay you more for it. The best example here is the armor and the blacksmith. If you have an armor lying around, you could sell it to the blacksmith, and the blacksmith will pay you a nice sum for it. But if you would sell it to the armorer, who actually deals in armors, he will pay you more for it. The opposite is true as well if you have weapons or swords. Now between these two guys, the difference isn't that massive, but there is a massive difference if you would sell weapons or armor to a shopkeeper instead. Shopkeepers, general merchants, they buy and sell everything, so they see every item as not that valuable. So if you would sell them a sword or an armor, you will get a lot less money than if you would sell them to the merchant that actually specializes in it. This is also true for the innkeep. The innkeep will pay you more for food than a general merchant does, and more for drinks. And rarely he will also pay you more for furs than armorers and blacksmiths do. Herbalists will pay you more if you sell ingredients to them. And alchemists will pay you more if you also sell items to them that correspond with their profession. So keep that in mind. You don't have to be super specific, but if you have nice weapons and armor that are really expensive, don't sell them to the wrong merchant. Sell them to the right one, and you will really get an extra boost in money. This is the one part of the understanding of the Witcher economy. The second one is which merchants pay more. Now, Witcher 3 isn't Skyrim. In Skyrim, you have the speechcraft skill, which allows you to become a better haggler and make more money. The Witcher 3 doesn't allow that. You have to pay what the merchant wants to give you. But there are ways of increasing the amount of money you get for items, and that is by selling to the right one. Now, what do I mean with that? Well, there is an unwritten rule, but it is really the case that the richer the merchant is, the more he will be willing to pay for you for your items. For example, a lowly merchant in some backwater village like Oriton doesn't have a lot of money himself, doesn't know the worth of certain items, and won't pay you much money. But if you go to the richer places like here, or of course in Novigrad, those merchants are a lot richer, they're a lot wealthier, a lot smarter, and they will be willing to pay more money for items to you. And this is something that you really need to remember. Don't sell items, weapons, armor, gear to these people here in Velen. They're just not worth it. Instead, keep your items in your chests here, in your stash, which has an infinite amount of room. And then when you finally get to Novigrad, take out all your expensive weapons and armor that you don't need anymore, and then sell them to merchants who actually have money. The best ones, in my opinion, are the shopkeepers in Hierarch Square, as well as the armorer that is, I think, in somewhere over here. I also like to sell weapons and armor to Hattori, who also has a lot of money. The Rune Rights and his merchant friend also are always loaded. But the richest of all are the people in Toussaint. Like here, the legendary Lafargue, who allows you to make all the Grandmaster Witcher gear. This guy is freaking loaded. Look, he has 16,000 gold on him right now, and he pays a lot of money. If I were to sell this Magdera Cuirass, he pays you 473 gold, and that's a lot more than someone in a backwater province would. So you should really sell to the best merchants that are willing to pay the most for your goods. Then we come to the last parts of my tips, and this is where the big money now is. We understand to which merchant we have to sell. We need to sell to the rich merchant and the correct merchant. But then it comes to what we need to sell. There are three big things. You have weapons and armor. You have food, drink and other items. And then you have crafting components. So let's start with weapons and armor. Weapons and armor in the beginning of the game won't net you a lot of gold. Why? Well, because the amount of money merchants are willing to pay for something is dependent on the level of the gear. When you're a level 1 Witcher, you'll find level 1 to 3 swords, and those are like toothpicks for merchants. They'll pay you maybe 5 gold a piece for an entire sword. So it's not really useful for you to start hoarding those things and then sell them off. However, once you start leveling and the weapons and armor around you start leveling up, merchants will be willing to pay more for it. And by the end of the game, for a simple, unenchanted, basic sword, you can easily get 100 golds for each sword you sell. And in the Toussaint Hanse bases, for example, which are these big bandit camps, you can easily find 50 of these swords. You take them all and you sell them all at 100 gold a piece, and that's an easy 5,000 gold. But it's a bit, in the beginning of the game, I wouldn't look too much at weapons and armor to sell, because they weigh a lot and the money you get for it just isn't really worth it. However, the big exception to the rule here are relics, which are these ones here in brown, or bronze, whatever. These items are a lot more valuable. As you can see, this Magdera Cuirass costs like 1,135 gold, and I think even lower versions also really easily can cost 800 gold. And these are the ones that you should always loot whenever you find them, and then keep them in your stash to sell them later on. What I also always do, and then we come back to dismantling, I first check, should I dismantle this item for the gear that it's inside? If not, then I keep them in my stash until I get to a place like Novigrad where there are a lot of rich merchants, and then I start selling off all these relic weapons and armor for really nice amounts of money. Now, as you can see here, 1,135 gold, you're probably not going to get that. Yeah, merchants are really good hagglers themselves, but if you can at least get half of it, or a bit less or something, you already are happy. And of course, who do you sell it to? You sell it to the armorer, because the armorer is specialized in this. You can also see that I have a lot of runestones in my possession. Most of these I actually don't use, but I like to keep a certain amount of them safe. And you can also sell off these ones if you so wish, but it's a bit dependent on your playstyle. Me, for example, I prefer enchanting my weapons and armor, and for the rest I mostly only use Quen. So these lesser glyphs are pretty important for me to then make greater glyphs of, and then maybe eventually put them into my armors. So that means that all the other glyphs here, like Igni or Axii, I'll probably never use. Same for all these weapon runestones, because I again enchant my weapons. You, for example, may be a different kind of player, but it might be a good thing to try and sell off things that you don't really use or that are a bit less valuable. Maybe always keep the greater runestones for yourself, but from the runestones you really have a lot of, you can easily sell a big bunch of them off and keep like a cutoff of a couple of runestones. For example, you say 10, you always try to keep 10 of the Vanna runestones in your possession, and all the excess you sell off. That means for this Stribog runestone, I could now sell 17 of those and still keep a safe stock of them in my possession. Food and drink then. Honestly, I could probably sell off all of these. Food and drink is pretty important in Death March, but once you get access to reliable potions like White Raffords and Swallow to keep healthy, you can easily sell off all these goods for some pretty nice amounts of money. But yeah, some of them are just so low, like 3 gold, that I almost don't care. But if you want to sell them off to an innkeep, and probably you still get maybe 1k or something extra money for you to spend. And for other items, most of these I break down to crafting components, but sometimes when you feel like you already have enough of those, you can sell them off, and many of them sell for a really nice amount of money. Books and other things you should also keep, and then sell them off to the bookkeeper in Novigrad, in the town square, who will pay you a lot more, and for certain books even more money than a regular merchant would do. And then we come to crafting and alchemy components. So if you're a thorough explorer and looter, you'll easily find tons and tons of these components. Then it's a point of making a cutoff and knowing which of the items are the most valuable for you. What I like to do is say, for example, that I always want 20 crafting components of any type in my inventory, and all the things in excess then I sell off to merchants. For example, water essence, I now have 40. I would only need 20, so everything in excess I sell. 26 algal claws, everything in excess of 20 I sell off. This is a bit of a feeling because some things you really shouldn't sell. Things like cured draconic leather, dimeridium ore, actually any type of ore. Why? Because these ores are also used to create ingots, and the ingots are used to create plates, and you could really quickly use up a lot of them in certain crafting. So yeah, it's a bit of a feeling, a give and a take. I wouldn't really sell off my sapphires either, or maybe my diamonds, unless I really have a lot of them like I have now. But you know, if you have too much of a certain item, just sell them off. Even a cutoff of 20 is maybe a bit too much. 15 in your inventory is still high enough, I think. And just have a bit of a feeling on which things you better sell and which things you better not sell. And so if you follow these tips, you sell off you hoard valuable items, valuable crafting components, valuable weapons and armor, and then sell them to the right person, you will make a lot of money in a very short time. And I'm going to show you this now by selling off so much money to Lafargue that he won't have anything left anymore. And I'm just going to sell out some stuff, and we're going to see just how easy it is to become rich. This is really the best way to become rich. So thank you for watching. I hope you've learned a couple of things. Now I'm just going to kill off that monster I've forgotten in Skellige, and then I'm just going to talk about the channel a bit more. Thank you very much. Bye bye. So what are my further plans for this channel? Well, I'm a big Warhammer 40k fan, specifically orcs. I'm a really big orc player, have a lot of models. I'm a guy who likes to min-max a bit and just talk about stuff, so my idea was to make a series of videos where I would review and then talk about the many units in the roster, and also give some tips and strategies. I'm not an expert player by any means, but I just like things, and I think I'm just good at explaining things, not necessarily maybe being the best at it myself, but just talking about it. I also still have a lot of ideas for maybe gaming related things, how to beat this game on Death March, how to have a great start in the Witcher 3. I also beat all the Mass Effect games on Insanity. So it would be really maybe interesting for you guys if I made videos about that. And then maybe let you learn about something. Alright, but first some focus, and let's kill ourselves a demon. Come. very too easy. um, blood for the blood god! Skulls for the skull throne. And of course corn for the cornflakes. Very important. So yeah, thank you for watching the video. I hope you've learned something again and maybe it would help you on your travels. And yeah, leave a like if you like what you've seen, and maybe support me on my my other endeavors or give me tips on what you would like to see.